You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the editor of Nottinghamshire Live, Natalie Fahy, and the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Jake Wallis-Simons. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Times leads on Boris Johnson's attempts to hit the reset button at number 10 with his new Chief of Staff and Communications Chief in what the paper calls a bid to win the confidence of Tory backbenchers. The Guardian reports that 500,000 people face delays in seeing a cancer specialist due to overstretched NHS waiting lists. The cost of living crisis could see food prices rise by 5%, according to the Metro. They also carry an image of the Queen as she marks 70 years on the throne. Busy Lizzie is the headline for The Sun, which has word that the Queen is back to a full diary after a 4-month break. The Yorkshire Post has an official photograph of the Queen sitting in front of her red dispatch box of government papers with the headline, Queen's Regal Blessing for Camilla. The Financial Times considers if the fallout of the Russian military escalation in Ukraine could cause an EU energy crisis. And The Star says the UK will be hit by a 1,500-mile-wide snowstorm on Valentine's Day. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we're joined tonight by Natalie Fahy and Jake Wallis-Simons. Welcome to you both. Good evening. Let's start with the Yorkshire Post and that regal blessing from the Queen to Camilla. Jake, take us into this.
Well, the Queen has announced that Camilla Parker Bowles will become known as the Queen Consort once the Queen passes away and Prince Charles ascends to the throne. And this really is a big move for the Queen. As we all know, the history of how Camilla came into the royal family is quite a checkered one. She was famously the third person in the marriage between Charles and Diana some years ago. And I think that initially when she became public as Prince Charles's partner and eventually wife, she had to overcome a great deal of stigma in the eyes of the public and indeed in the eyes of the family. But this, I guess the Queen is saying now, was a long time ago. And what this really shows, this move to elevate her to Queen Consort once the Queen passes away, this move really shows that the Queen rewards duty and has got a great sense of compassion and magnanimity, and is formally accepting Camilla into that role. By contrast, she has quite decisively ejected Prince Andrew, stripping his titles in the wake of the sex scandal, and also has been fairly decisive with her response to Prince Harry leaving the family and moving to America as well. So you can see that she really prizes duty above all else, and that indeed is what Camilla has shown year in, year out, and decade in, decade out. And the Queen is combining that appreciation of duty with a really powerful, compassionate move, which I think will be welcomed by the public at large today.
Natalie, this is quite significant because, in effect, what she's done is ease the pathway for Camilla in future by giving her a blessing of this sort. She's really set in motion what her wishes would be, which will be taken into high regard.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sad. It's really sad in a way because she's preparing for inevitably what will be a hugely dark day for the whole of the country. But it's been fantastic to see all these new photos of the Queen coming out this weekend because we haven't seen her for quite a few months now. I think it's 4 months or something. She's not really done any duties and she looks absolutely fantastic in all these pictures. And, I think from the point of view of the whole country, her resilience over the last year, what everyone's been through, what she's been through, and just to come out with this completely calm accession day speech and say, look, this is what I want. We all know what's going to happen eventually, but I just want to set the record straight before I leave. And it's just wonderful, really. And, I'm saying that as a Republican, but I think you can't help but respect the Queen now from what she's been through, what she's doing for her family, and how she's setting down how things will be in the future once she's gone. And that's what everyone wants, really. A calm monarchy, leading the country as opposed to the chaos we have in the government.
That's a bit of a segue. We're not quite moving on to politics just yet. We were showing the front page of the Metro and their headline, So Happy and Glorious, and reflecting really on her 70-year reign and the dedication that she's shown to the country and how she's very seriously taking her vows to serve. Jake?
Yes, and the pictures tell their own story. They're very carefully designed to give us a sense of what that this milestone means for Her Majesty. She's looking beaming, full of life, very positive. This, don't forget, is the first major landmark that she's encountering without Prince Philip at her side. There's an element of poignancy there, but she's forward-looking. You know, she's 95 years old. She's full of beams and beaming, and also importantly, is pictured doing her work. So, you know, I think that these pictures are really showing us that she is not going anywhere. This is a positive moment for her, you know, and she's still able to carry out her duties and do all the things that we rely on her to do. Putting that month or two over Christmas when she wasn't very well, if you recall, and she sort of moved away from public life a bit during that period, putting that behind us. So now, you know, she's very much, you know, in the picture again, the head of state. Leading our country and is in a very positive frame of mind.
Yes, I mean, reading one of the other papers that she's returning to full duties. Just some of the other tributes being paid to her and commemorations for the Jubilee. A 50p Jubilee coin will be released by the Post Office. That's happening on Monday. And the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, just paying tribute to her unwavering dedication to the nation, and the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, praising her unparalleled public service. Let's move on to the Times, Natalie, and just mentioning the Prime Minister there and his attempt to reset the button, this new team that he has brought in.
Yeah, well, this article's about we had all the resignations last week of all the key staff at Number 10, and now we're seeing a whole raft of new people brought in, including Steve Barclay, who is going to be the new Chief of Staff, and will have a grand total of 3 jobs. So there's a few questions being raised about how he's going to manage those, because he is a constituency MP as well for North East Cambridgeshire. Not sure what the people of that constituency think about all of that. But the whole kind of premise of this article is to set out that there's going to be a new grown-up atmosphere at Number 10, as opposed to what went before, which I suppose they're saying was not grown up and mired in scandal, parties, birthday cake and ambushes. It's very clear that now the government wants to leave that behind them, and they're saying this is a new era for us. We're grown-ups now, we're taking things seriously, and you should take the Prime Minister seriously with his new staff. Whether people will or not remains to be seen, but there's mention in there of another new arrival too, Dame Emily Lawson, who's expected to be announced as new permanent secretary, and of course she was the head of the vaccination programme for NHS England. So lots of new people coming in there, some of them non-political as well, which is interesting.
And Jake, do you think this will make a difference to the public and backbench Conservative MPs?
Well, I mean, as Natalie rightly pointed out, Steve Barclay has arrived and has immediately come under attack for having many roles. I mean, he's an MP, as Natalie said. He's the Cabinet Office Minister. He's the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, and he's also doing other duties as well. He's leading a review of the migrant issue in the Channel. So he's got many different things going on, and this is pretty unprecedented. You know, people like Nick Timothy or Jonathan Powell didn't have all of those things on their plate at the same time. They were just Chief of Staff. And, Boris's restive backbenchers have taken that opportunity to criticise this appointment on that basis. And it's understandable they do so. But we'll have to wait and see whether the overall team is going to be restructured in such a way to allow Steve Barclay to do his job alongside those other roles. I think that really what Boris is trying to do now is to create something out of the wreckage of the past few months, because not only has there been Partygate, but he's been hit by these resignations. At least one of them, Munir Mirza, mentioning specifically his attack on Keir Starmer with regard to the Jimmy Savile allegations. And so Boris is desperately trying to form a new team on the wreckage of his old team, which dissolved amid great acrimony. And the most poisonous of all, of course, was Dominic Cummings, who is still pouring poison in from the sidelines. So Boris has got his work cut out to stabilise his operation. And at the same time, his own MPs are trying to destabilise it for him. So very tough times ahead for Boris.
Jake and Natalie, do stay with us. We are going to take a break. Coming up, a warning that food prices could rise by 5%. We'll be discussing that after the break. Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me once again, the editor of Nottinghamshire Live, Natalie Fahy, and the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Jake Wallace-Simons. Let's take a look at the Metro, and this is the continuing cost of living crisis. Now majoring on food, the cost of food, set potentially to go up by 5% within the week. Jake.
This is the last thing we want to hear, isn't it, really? The cost of food is going to go up in addition to everything else. There's been so much in the news about gas prices and the gas scarcity is causing our energy prices to shoot up, about inflation, about interest rates going up, hitting mortgage owners in particular in the pocket. And now, groceries are going up as well. I think the problem for the government with this is that the Tories have presided over a huge tax burden. It's higher now than it was for 71 years. And that, in the headlines, has been bound up with this cost of living crisis, in that this national insurance hike is coming down the line. And we know it's going to cause a lot of people a lot of pain. And so this is not just a case of global gas crises and energy price rises and so on and so forth. This is a political matter that directly harms the government. The national insurance hike is just the worst thing at the worst time. And the other thing issue with this is that a lot of the Tories' latest new supporters from the last election are from the red wall seats from the north, who are not as affluent as the traditional Tory supporters from the south and southeast. And they're going to be hit harder than anyone else by these cost of living crises and the tax rises, and they are quickly going to fall even further out of love with the Tories than they have already. So this presents a very, very difficult problem for the government.
Yeah, very worrying when the Tesco chairman is saying that the worst is still to come with a shock at the checkout. Let's have a look now at the FT, and this is a comment piece on levelling up, just saying that actually it's an urgent challenge that needs to be addressed. Take us into this, Natalie.
Well, it's quite right. It is an urgent challenge that needs to be addressed. I'm obviously editor of Nottinghamshire Live, one of the, in the East Midlands, we've got a large number of red wall MPs in this area, a lot of people who voted for the Conservatives for the first time ever in 2019. Of course, the paper was quite disappointing because it didn't really answer the questions we wanted to know and raised many more questions. It was quite interesting. They're saying we're going to be all levelled up by 2030 and it'll all be solved. Of course, nobody actually believes that's the case. For a start, where's the money going to come from? We've just spent billions on COVID. There's nothing left. Inflation is going through the roof. And the question from my point of view, thinking about Nottingham and Nottinghamshire in particular, is who in the regions will enable this ambitious programme of change? It's quite clear that your city councils and county councils might not be equipped to deal with it. And there's already been conversations in Nottinghamshire around changing the structure of that. Perhaps we could see a regional mayor coming in, an elected mayor who would have the authority to impose those kind of changes we do need. That would obviously be a big change and would upset the councils around here. They wouldn't like that at all, I don't think. But maybe that's what we need to level up.
One possible suggestion there. Natalie, thank you. And Jake, we shall see you at 11:30. Going to take a look at the weather now.